the Catholic Morning Show.
This is Iowa Catholic Radio. We are delighted to have you back with us here on Iowa Catholic Radio. I am Bo Bonner. We have Alexia Baker, Brady Grimm, and Aiden Pugh. All of us glad you're here with us here on the Iowa Catholic Radio Catholic Morning Show. We sort of hinted at this a bit, but just to let all of you know some of the things that are coming up soon. Of course, May 1st is Friday, so that is the first Friday. That's good to always know. And so we'll have Mass at 11:30 a.m. here at St. Gabriel's Chapel. We have our year-end carnival from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. at Dowling Catholic High School. We got to have a chance to talk to the organizers of that. So that's coming up here this weekend as well. So, and then Iowa Catholic Radio Golf Classic, June 11th, coming up soon. Let's turn to our final guest of the day. John Huynh is the Director of Social Justice for the Diocese of Des Moines and for the Catholic Charities here in Des Moines as well. John, thank you for coming on the Catholic Morning Show.
Good morning. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So a lot of people feel discouraged about, we can just say, the entire world right now. We don't even have to get into details. We can just say in a general sense. So given with everything that's going on, how is it that Catholic social teaching is going to speak to that background anxiety and worries that people have?
Yeah, I think the first thing that Catholic social teaching does is it's not going to gaslight people into thinking that everything is fine. I think there are real pressures right now, right? I mean, economically, families are, I'm sure, feeling very stressed. There's just kind of a general sense that things are not right. But what Catholic social teaching does is that it refuses to let those realities define us and our calling, in an ultimate sense, because it starts with a different premise, if you will, that the human person still has dignity, that community is essential, that love is still a virtue that is going to shape society. And so instead of collapsing into a kind of cynicism or what we often experience is outrage, it reorients us towards the ultimate goal. And so CST, or Catholic social teaching, would say that if things feel broken, then our response shouldn't be to withdraw from it, but that we're called to a deeper engagement, a kind of ultimate engagement, if you will, one that's rooted in seeing the dignity in people, in seeking solidarity with others, and taking responsibility for one another.
One of the things I think is important when it comes to how we should feel and how Catholic social teaching can help orient us. The first thing to point out is it's just correct and actually the truth. So I think in a very practical way. So for instance, the endless persistence that war, if it is to be had at all, is to be the last resort because of how interconnected the devastations of war are. I was just thinking, John, about one of the news reports that we read off today is that now it's hard for food banks to give as much food because fuel costs are so high, and that is directly related to the war. And so when, Leo the 14th as the Pope, when our various bishops and archbishops and pastors are saying, you won't even imagine the extent in which war will mess with precisely the innocent, the poor, and the weak, Catholic social teaching was proven correct. It's not just some interpretation. It guessed what was going to happen, and it did. And so on one hand, I think people should feel confident that Catholic social teaching knows what it's talking about. But then, like as you said, we know that, but now we're in the situation that we're in. How is it that Catholic social teaching helps us with Christian hope rather than just being optimistic when it's fairly obvious that optimism doesn't really pan out?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it, that you mentioned that Catholic social teaching is always right. Well, the Church knows human experience very well, the human condition very well, and I think to your question, optimism I think is always kind of tied to outcomes, and so we can be optimistic that something is going to turn out well, but Christian hope doesn't really do that. It's reading the situation from God's perspective rather than from our own perspective. So hope then is rooted in, as we're celebrating the Easter season, hope is rooted in the fact that Christ is risen, which means that when things look like they're going in the wrong direction, that's not the full scale of the story. Optimism can really disappear pretty quickly, I think, but hope doesn't. Hope doesn't do that. Hope exists in many ways, and it can show itself up in struggling marriages, in wartime, that there is an end to it, that their peace is something that is achievable. And so I think the simplest way to put that is that, optimism can often say things are improving, and when things don't improve, it can fall into despair. But hope says that God is still at work, even if we don't know it yet, or we don't see it yet, and we don't experience it yet.
Yeah, it's hard to be optimistic in some ways, where it's like, God became man and dwelt among us, and humans chose mostly darkness instead. So you go, so it's not just the case that if you leave things, let them be, they usually sort of turn out right. It's kind of not like how the universe works. But hope is that despite this sort of surface entropy, that God's grace is sort of like explosions of hope that keep happening all throughout history, the most significant one, of course, being the resurrection. And as you said, there's resurrections each and every day if we start to look for it. But how is it that ordinary people then can carry this hope when problems feel so large? And what does Catholic social teaching sort of bridge that gap, that we can have hope even if the problems seem out of our hands?
Yeah, I think this is where a lot of us get stuck, right? Because the scale of the problems at times, especially now, can feel so overwhelming. When everything feels really big, it's easy to think that what I do really doesn't matter. But the church's vision and the Christian vision, and the vision therefore extended in Catholic social teaching, really doesn't work that way. It's I think you've hit on this many times in your presentations and through your conversations, Bo, is that it's very local. It's very personal, relational, and it's local, right? I remember once going to a mass, and in the homily, the priest said something that really has always stayed with me. This is several years ago. And he said this, he said, you matter so much that God created you. And if anything you are meant to do in this life is left undone, it remains undone for all of eternity. And that really, really struck me, especially when I get a little bogged down, in work and life. And even this past week, I was at a small group. We have a small group of parents from St. Francis who, we meet twice a month just to do Bible study and just to help each other grow in faith. And we were talking about parenting and just how hard it can be at times, and the kind of heart that really feels overwhelming in the moment. And sometimes, it can seem like almost meaningless. Just the repetition, the fatigue, you wondering if anything is sticking. But we concluded, of course, that God is in all of that, that through all the messiness and through all the struggles, God is amidst that. And that's where really hope can play itself out. It's carried out in many ordinary ways. I think Karl Rahner, one of my favorite theologians, I know that doesn't fly well, but he wrote this lengthy prayer where he began by saying, Rahner was a priest, and he's like, Lord, why do you send me to all these people? And because what I get when I have conversations with them is this really superficial kind of thing where they're sharing very minimal about their lives and struggles that they think are too big but really aren't that big. And by the end of that prayer, he'd concluded that, oh wait, you are in all of those things that they're sharing with me, even those that I think are superficial. You're amidst all of that. And it's me who needs to realize that it's not just the grand scale things that you're involved in, but that you're involved in the little things. And so that, if we're talking about hope and in trying to change the world, if you will, that is where we begin, is in the little things, the local things.
Yeah, we're not talking about metaphysics, so you can bring up Ronner. It's fine. Here, to counter Ronner, I'll end us talking with Benedict XVI, right? It'll balance it all out. He made the point, right, that it's not only that God, the universal of all universals, chose to become one man, Jesus Christ. He chose to become Jesus Christ, one man, in a particular place, in a particular time, purposefully choosing first century Palestine for myriad reasons. But the idea is that incarnational intersection between what is universally true for all times, but lived out in the here and now in that place. And we are the same. We have 2 minutes left, so let's get to maybe some opportunities where people can live out incarnational particular hope here in the Diocese of Des Moines through the work that you guys are doing in social justice. What can people go check out to see how they can incarnate hope in the here and now?
Yeah, if people are feeling called to do those things, visit CatholicCharitiesDM.org. There, that's our Catholic Charities website. They could peruse that, but it's right there on the front page where you can look at the various programs that we have. You were talking about kind of food insecurity and how much cost has risen and things like that. And people are, of course, always in need of food, one of the most essential things. So go to our website, CatholicCharitiesDM.org. There you'll find plenty of opportunities to live out this hope, making it incarnational.
Absolutely wonderful. As always, we get a chance once a month to speak with John Huynh, Director of Social Justice through Catholic Charities and the Diocese of Des Moines here in our Diocese of Des Moines. John, thank you for coming on the Catholic Morning Show.
Thank you.
Listen to the Catholic Morning Show weekdays at 7 a.m. Central on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network, iowacatholicradio.com, or the Iowa Catholic Radio app.